Welcome back to Switzer on Australia's Business Channel. Now, my next guest says the Reserve Bank of Australia has seen the writing on the wall. He believes the central bank is concerned about the prospect of bubbles emerging in the Australia's highly leveraged housing market. In its semi-annual financial stability review, the RBA has bluntly warned banks that it is particularly important they maintain prudent risk appetite and lending practices, and especially in the current low interest rate environment. For more, I'm joined by Christopher Joye, Director at Yellow Brick Road and star writer for the Australian Financial Review. How are you, mate?
Good, mate.
Now, of course, I invited you on the program because I was being interviewed on Adelaide Radio ABC, and they were all worried on Monday about housing bubbles. And I said to them, is this because of the tripe, no, I didn't say that, the stuff that Christopher Joye wrote over the weekend? They all laughed. So obviously they'd read your article over the weekend and you'd scared them, right? And I said, well, look, I just think the housing bubble stuff is being overhyped. And of course, I said a few things to tease you, but you weren't there. So I rang you up and
As
said,
you do, mate.
yeah.
As you
So I said, I've given you a bit of a roasting on ABC Radio, so I'll give you a chance to respond.
Sure.
So what do you say to the fact that people out there, after reading you, think you're saying there's a housing bubble, beware, beware?
I think it's a very good thing. I think that anyone who's not anxious and exercised about the fact that house prices in Australia are growing at more than 3 times the rate of wages, in concert with the fact that borrowing rates are at the lowest level in recorded history, in addition to the fact that household leverage is at or near all-time highs. Our house price to income ratio...
You've got normal people listening. Sure. Household leverage, they don't know what you're talking about.
So the amount of debt that's held against housing is probably 3 to 4 times what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, you started to sound like Steve Keen here. You were banking a few years ago.
Well, he got it wrong in 2008. And people said, I was wrong to say that we'd have a modest correction in 2008, and that's exactly what happened. And likewise, I thought the market would recover in 2012, and the recovery started in May.
Pretty slow, wasn't it?
2012. It was slow initially, but I was pretty confident we'd have double-digit growth. But I think you're naive or conflicted if you're not exercised about future housing risks, because we're seeing in Sydney annualised growth rates around 13%. Nationally now... But
you're annualising off monthly figures, aren't you?
No, I'm annualising off 9 months of data.
The September 12 months is 8.3%.
In the 9 months to September 25, Sydney house prices are up about 9.2% from memory, or 9.3%, and national house prices are up about 6-point-something%.
Because the figures I got this week was Sydney was up 1.2% in 2012. That's not scary.
No, that's right.
It fell 2.4% in 2011, and I've got 8.3. But let's just say you're 9.
Yeah,
I'm saying to myself, and by the way, if you look at the 10-year RP data, you might bag RP data. I don't know if you do or not, but they said...
I design the index.
Yeah, okay, so you don't bag them. So it's said that Sydney's annual increase over 10 was only 2.5%.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So
and actually,
why should we get panicky now, Christopher? Sure. Explain to us, should we be panicking now, or should we be panicking in the future?
No, we should be panicking about the future. Current housing conditions are very, very robust. The demand side is being fueled by very strong population growth. Yeah. The supply side is being supported by the fact that we're not building enough homes for our future population needs. You've got to remember, mate, by way of background, I was rolled out by almost every bank in Australia to present to their investors to convince them why the housing market wouldn't implode.
How long was that?
In 2008 and in 2000, frankly, 10 and 11, when people were worried about the correction.
All these people who loved you
but
and
wait a
supported
second. I also, I think, was the first to point out that Sydney house prices in the circa 8 or 9 years after the 2003 boom had only grown at about 2% per annum. Yeah. So what we're seeing right now isn't cause for extreme concern. The problem is, mate, the market right now is priced for perfection, and I want to make this point that...
Price for perfection.
Yeah, price for perfection, absolutely. And we can't afford for house prices to grow at 3 or 4 times the rate of incomes for a very long period of time, because the housing market will become increasingly overvalued. And on the valuation front, what people often refer to is the ratio of house prices to household incomes. Yeah. Now, that ratio today is only about 10% off its all-time highs. So it's not far from being more overvalued than it has been in any other point in history. And if we keep on getting this disconnect between price growth and incomes for 12 to 24 months, we will be faced with a situation where we could have an acute housing correction.
But Christopher, if you look at that argument you made, isn't it the actual prick of the bubble? If my wages can't keep up with the repayments, let's face it, the banks in this country aren't America. and we have to pay back our loans. We can't just throw the keys and walk away. Unless we get a severe unemployment situation, the housing bubble threat to our banks and undermining banks is not very real, is it?
No, I think that's totally wrong, and it's absolutely real.
So you think that we could have unemployment of, say, 5%, and people are paying back their loans, and we still could have a housing bubble problem?
Let me put the situation.
I understand that.
Yeah, so
I'm here to listen to you.
Okay,
that's why I bring the smart guys on the program.
Sure. Let me respond. So what I'm actually concerned about is, firstly, we've got mortgage rates at, with some banks sub 5%. The average mortgage rate since 1993 is about 7.6%. The average mortgage rate.
But the average inflation rate was a lot higher too. Then
No, the average inflation rate since 1993 is about 3%, and it's roughly 2 point something today. So it's not wildly different. But here's the point: mortgage rates could go to 8 or 9% easily. You know that, right? They were at 8. Well, the headline mortgage rate was at 9.6% in August 2008. The issue is not necessarily a huge increase in the jobless rate. It could be the case that with the game changer that is the self-managed supermarket, you've got $400 to $500 billion of cash there that has not historically invested in property. You can now borrow in self-managed super. You can get LVRs of 80%. It's on a non-recourse basis, which is US subprime-like. And that capital is treating housing as a financial investment, not as an owner-occupied property. So it's much more dispassionate capital. Now, here's what could happen. In 2 or 3 years' time, we could have had very, very strong house price inflation. Mortgage rates are back at 7 or 8%. House prices start falling like they did in 2011, like they did in 2008, and people start saying to themselves, actually, I'm not going to get house prices rising at 3 or 4 times wages. House prices are falling, and we could have a sudden change in expectations and a very significant correction. So a 10 to 20% fall in house prices. Here's the problem. The problem is the major banks have $1 trillion in mortgages. Against that $1 trillion in mortgages, they're holding, on an equivalent basis, for every $100 of home loans, they're holding about $1.25 of cash. If the value of those home loans falls, the entire banking system could be made technically insolvent. So this is such an important asset class.
But how much does it have to fall?
Not much. No, the home loans.
Come on, you see Ian Narev and Gail Kelly sitting up on a ticking time bomb, and they're not worried about it?
They are worried. I think they're absolutely. Well, why do you think APRA's warning the banks and the RBA's warning the banks? Everyone's worried about it.
No, they're not really warning big time. It's like we're keeping on.
No, because they've got an incentive.
The statement came out today.
Sure.
And the Reserve Bank was more worried about Europe and maybe self-managed super funds. And I interviewed John Simon and Matt Common Retail Bank at. I said,
you're 100% right.
What's happening?
You're 100% right. The banks are trying to talk down the risks, as they would do, because 60% of their assets are home loans.
Matt said that the number of loans for self-managed super funds is really small. So it's like the spookers have come out. We're presuming everyone's doing it. And if I'm in a self-managed super fund, I'm not going to pay a silly price for a house.
So can I just numerically explain to you? So there's over
numerically. Now you're going to try to pull numbers over me.
We need to understand. There's $1 trillion of home loans, and the banks are only holding, for every $100 of home loans, $1.25, to be precise, of cash. So you only need a tiny fall in the value of home loans to completely wipe out their capital, right? Now, the problem is, well, not the problem, the benefit the banks have is they...
but what's the Reserve Bank to stop, APRA, to stop them from lending? If the problem is
well, that's what they've done in New Zealand.
They haven't done it here.
The problem, to be clear, I'm very supportive of the underlying fundamentals in the housing market. And I'm much more worried about risks in 12 to 24 months' time if we continue to get near or double-digit house price inflation.
So what do you want to solve? You want interest rates to start going up?
I think that having hear me out. I think that having the lowest borrowing rates in history, lower rates than you or I have seen in our lifetimes, is not sustainable. And I think folks need to understand, the viewers tonight, that you need to be prepared to pay mortgage rates that are 3 to 4 percentage points above current levels in the upswing of the interest rate cycle. I mean, that's on the balance of probabilities. We're going to see 8 to 9% mortgage rates again during our lifetimes.
But this economy will be weak as water if the dollar can't go down. You know that. The Reserve Bank
knows
that.
And we may have the dollar that comes down, we may see interest rates normalise again. And I think that the RBA...
So Brian Whittaker, he thinks there's 2 interest rate cuts coming, and NAB 1, Westpac 1. They're all ignoring this too. They're nincompoops.
Yeah, no, I think that you are seeing a bit of a disconnect right now, a bit of a change in views. The RBA I don't think you expected to see 89% auction clearance rates in Sydney. I don't think it. I know they didn't.
You and I knew as soon as the interest rates go, it was going to go 89%. Come on.
But I don't think they expect to see double-digit house price inflation, and I don't think they necessarily.
We haven't got double-digit yet. We're at 9. You said you've upped it.
Sorry, on an annualised basis, yeah, Sydney house prices are growing at 13% per annum, right?
All right.
National house prices are growing at 9% per annum, based on the last 9 months of data. So in 2000, all the data for 2013, we're growing at near double-digit rates nationally, and I don't think they expected to see this, and that's why we got the warnings today. To be clear, they warned banks not to be imprudent with lending, given exceptionally low rates. They've warned consumers not to expect house prices to grow faster than incomes, and they're growing 3 to 4 times incomes. They've warned that the self-managed super fund market is a game changer for property because we've never had it before. Right, super was implemented in '92. We've now got 400 to 500 billion in self-managed super. They've never invested in property before, and they've got tiny allocations currently, but that could change. Right,
that's right. It's very tiny. But if I'm going to hold,
so it's all about the future risks.
Be a buy and holder, and as long as the rents keep coming in, as long as people got jobs, I'm not going to sell this because remember there are a lot of Australians out there who've had negative equty before, and they didn't know it because they weren't going to sell it. Everyone in the newspapers now you've become a journalist. You become a real negative. What do you call it? When someone's
can I say the key point is that the viewers should understand they should only expect 3 to 4% capital growth through the cycle from their homes. Anything more than that is probably unrealistic. Wages are growing at 3%.
That's on average. That's on
average through the cycle. That's the key message, right?
Well, I'm looking at Brisbane Gold Coast, mate. They're only up 1.8%, and they probably fell 20%.
Yeah, I'm focused on the $4 trillion of housing across Australia, 45% of which is accounted for by New South Wales, where it's growing at a 13% per annum rate. So just to be clear, the fundamentals.
You've sold all your bank stocks. You must be so worried about banks. You've sold all your bank stocks.
No, I think the banks are going to make out like absolute bandits, and housing will be a great investment, as I've said consistently on the show, for as long as rates remain low. Now, if Brian Redican is right and the RBA cuts another 2 times, then it's going to be it's a boom currently, but it'll be a bonanza. Now, just to be clear on my own views, I think that to the extent that the current momentum in the housing market solidifies further, I think it's unlikely the RBA will cut rates because the RBA is exercised about this, and it's such an
exercised.
No, it's focused on this. Okay, last week we heard that Malcolm Eadie, who's a guy that works at the RBA, was
he's the assistant governor, isn't he?
No, but for the viewers, right? He's an RBA guy.
But he wasn't worried about that.
No, allegedly he was. Last week he was saying that everything's fine, it's okay. But this week, today we had the Financial Stability Review where we've got lots of warnings that the RBA. I mean, for instance, they said in New South Wales that property investment activity is at its highest level since 2004. And in unusually blunt language for the bank, they said that there are anecdotes of prices transacting for well above fair value. So they're sending out the signals. They don't use much stronger language.
So if Christopher Joye is right, and you're not on the program because you're often wrong, but you could be wrong this time, I hope you are, fix these loans because buddy boy, they're going up.
Mate. I fixed for 5 years, and for sure. But this is one of the issues. I raised this with the RBA privately. If you're fixing, just remember that you can only fix for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But once that switches back to a variable rate, remember you could be paying 7, 8, 9% mortgage rates.
By 5 years, if they go up to where you say we'll be back in recession and rates will be down. Mate, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Good article as always. After the break, Marcel von Pfeiffer joins us with his view on whether this bull market can last.